figure it out.
I think I'm. Yeah. Yeah, you just can't count on Mahomes. He's got to be the one.
You can't count him out.
Tua Tagovailoa.
And speaking of not counting anybody out, hello and welcome to the Average Bros Gym podcast, where your hosts with eerily similar names, Croy and Kory, talk you through fitness, health, and life advice. I forgot the rest of it. No polarizing black and white takes. Only genuine advice and good conversation. Thanks. I don't have it up right now.
Plenty up.
But thanks to Kory for that assist. Thanks, buddy.
Just lobbed it up there.
Lobbed it up, slam dunk. That's the only dunk I'm ever gonna do because I'm 5'7".
Well, every time that we've played basketball, we've never been fortunate enough to come across a playground that had a lowered hoop.
Right. What is up with that?
It's interesting. Like, why did they just select those certain parks to have a rim that's down? But we've never been. Actually, there's one over in Northeast that we could potentially go to right at Los Campeones. So and they got a lowered rim.
Here's the thing.
Dunkable.
I get the idea because you don't want to play on a. I wouldn't want to shoot on a hoop that was like 7 feet tall. Mm. But also, I want to dunk.
Yes, and just feel what it must be like.
Yeah. So, in the absence of being able to dunk, now here's the deal. People have won the dunk contest at my height. I'm 5'7.5".
How many?
How many people have won the dunk contest at 5? Probably like 2. I'm thinking 2. Well, did Muggsy Bogues ever win? Spud Webb won. Spud Webb. Okay. Well, so here's the deal. Muggsy. So back in the day, like way back in the day. So back when I was a kid, in my basement, I had a Lego table. It was a wooden table that like my dad, or I think my dad or someone had painted. And it was like this big wooden table. Imagine like Game of Thrones. Imagine like the table at Dragonstone, right?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So my dad, like, there's this table that's painted, and like we even had like blue glass in the middle of it. Like it was a cutout blue glass in the middle. It's kind of like water, right?
Yeah.
And I just played with Legos on it. And in front of this table on the wall, there was it was from an old like NBA jam. It was like an NBA like magazine, and we cut out this big like poster that was like almost like the size of a wall. It was like a wall mural or whatever, and it was slam dunk champions throughout like the 80s and 90s. Oh. And it was like every year it was someone like that's the only reason I know people's names, like D Brown. Like D Brown is an old Celtics player. The only reason I know his name is because he won the slam dunk contest at one point. Spud Webb, who I believe was playing for the Hawks at that point, won the dunk contest. And if we look at how old or how tall Spud Webb was,
I was gonna say, I'm pulling this up right now. We're gonna run it back.
His name was actually Spud Webb, or it's probably a nickname. Anthony Jerome Spud Webb, 5'6".
Spud Webb. Yep, there he is.
5'6".
And he won, it looks like, in '86, and then immediately followed by arguably the greatest ever in Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. D. Brown? D. Brown, the greatest ever?
I'm going to say arguably because I don't know still yet where I stand on the LeBron James Michael Jordan debate. It's tough because LeBron still has yet to finish his career.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then you got the longevity argument. We could go back and forth on.
And the game is also very different.
Vastly different.
I think it's one of those debates that's going to just rage on forever. Like anytime people have that.
Agreed.
Like Agreed. I honestly think when people have those debates, I'm so happy for them, but I could not fucking care less. Because it's like you're not going to come to a conclusion. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, like I convinced this dude based on these like, random metrics, ambiguous metrics that this person is better than this person. It's like, if you've done that, what have you really accomplished?
See, what is it about? But I mean, then again, like, what is it inherently about maybe that conversation, that topic, and I'll speak for guys here, because you'll see all those.
Hey, ladies do this too.
Ladies do this too, I will say. But I always see like the memes and whatnot where it's, like, how can guys just sit around and talk about sports and, not even currently playing sports, but like old legends and stuff for hours and hours and hours and not get bored of the conversation? How many times have we gone back and forth on just talking about NFL, NBA, like, and then having that quote unquote barbershop talk.
Sure.
There's just, some camaraderie element, the laughter, the jokes, the nitpicking and poking. I feel that is maybe what kind of spurs it on. And because what again, if you're just looking at it from a conversation standpoint, or if it's like a debate, there's no reason to necessarily continue on with like, okay, well, LeBron James is inherently better because da da da, or Michael Jordan's the fucking GOAT. But it's like, all right, it's everyone's personal preference, how you read the situation and data and whatever else. Like, if there doesn't seem to be a natural, okay, we can both come to an agreement on this, I can see where you're coming from. Like, all right, well, what's the point? I don't see why people are excited about it so much.
With that, what you're saying in a nutshell is like it's the act of the actual debate that is the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's the act of the actual engagement.
Who can come up with like unique perspectives? Like got you in a little jab there. Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's like a sport,
conversational swordplay.
Yeah. Okay, conversation.
Yeah. Wow, we just went there.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it's all about. I think, and that's part of it. And that actually segues really nicely into the topic of today's podcast. That's right.
That's what
we're doing. Yeah. Core buttons on, right? It's the topic of the podcast today, which the Minnesota Vikings have ended their football season mercifully at this point, if I must.
That's I would say fair.
Maybe so bold. And I think that gets us into the question of like wanting to kind of recap how we felt about this, how we felt watching, what happened during the season, maybe perhaps. Obviously, it's gonna take a turn for the Wild here. But ideally, talk about like why we watch sports and kind of like what sports mean to us and to fandom and kind of what that looks like. And because a lot of people out there don't like sports, maybe football specifically, but like don't really watch it, and they might have something else that gets their attention. Like maybe you're a big watcher of like reality television or whatever, but there's some component that you get from watching these things that like enriches your life in some way. And if your friends or your partner is someone who watches sports, then they're constantly complaining about like why their team sucks. You might wonder, why do you still watch the fucking games then? Excuse my language. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, it might get heated.
Yeah, but it's like why do you watch the games if you're constantly complaining about your team being poor? And I think that's a really good question from the outside perspective. And Kory and I are here to help answer that.
Well, and I think you touch on just like a really interesting part right there that a lot of people might not think about is the passion that you do have for a sports team. We can talk and delve into like allegiances and the idea of like being a unit with other people, or just simply enjoying like you played it as a kid, whatever. But I thought the unique part there was you talked about like they just go fanatic. They might swear, they curse, they get emotionally charged by this thing. And it's like I like to think of fan is short for fanatic. Like you're just like a freak frenzy about whatever the sport might be. I'm a huge football guy. Basketball, I'll follow it along enough, but there is something where you have that, I don't know, I like when I watch football, oh my goodness, I'll just get like charged up, fired up. Maybe it's in the physical nature of it, the coaching side of things, and you have to be very analytical and you got to come in with a game plan and a strategy. So, I think that's an area that a lot of people like to pick apart and might resonate with. For some people, it's the sheer athleticism and just the physical feats of what these athletes are capable of that you're just in awe of. Like, wow, look at what they can do. And, whether it's football or basketball or gymnastics, like it is just such a beautiful expression of inherently an art form of what physical feats human beings are capable of when working with another team member and with just a team as a whole, maybe just in an individual sport and what that person's capable of. There's so many things that I think can resonate with people when it comes to sport. And that's why for me, sometimes it's almost, could I argue, like baffling when somebody doesn't have a sport or something that they resonate with. And maybe it goes more into music, or maybe it's more art, but sport in particular, I think is unique in a variety of different ways.
Sure. Yeah, and what you're saying is, and that might be, again, people will be listening to this and they might say, well, actually, like, they're big into, curling, or they're big into, like, and everybody's got their thing, right? Obviously, some sports are more niche than others.
Yes.
I think we can agree that American football in America is king by a mile.
Oh, it's not even close. Yep.
And, it's like, I think the top, if you look at, like, the top watch, like the top events watched, I mean, it's all gonna be football, if not national, and if it's not NFL football, it's gonna be college football.
TV ratings, NFL absolutely dominates all the way top to bottom, and then you get the occasional college football game that'll be in their big, like, naturally the one most recent being Michigan and
Washington.
Thank you
college.
for the assist there. I was like,
I got you on the college.
I'm not a big college fan, so that's why obviously for the pause there, I was like, wait a second, who was again? Caleb Penix, who looks like a potential Minnesota Viking right there.
Penix is Michael Penix.
Michael Penix.
And I keep saying Amir Penix because Amir Penix was a former Gopher running back in the day, but it's Michael Penix. And he's a lefty. And the Vikings are in need of a quarterback, whether that is Kirk being re-signed. He's a free agent. He's set to be a free agent, along with a lot of other people on the Vikings roster.
I feel like we should keep him.
And then Michael Penix is one of the quarterbacks coming out of this draft class. The draft class for quarterbacks this year is supposed to be pretty good.
Yes.
There's
generational talent at the top in Caleb Williams, and then you got Drake
May,
who's right behind him.
To him.
And that's the thing. It's like, so it's a big, heavy quarterback draft, and now that the league is becoming so offensively driven, if you don't have that guy at quarterback, you're kind of shit out of luck. So we're in a very unique spot there with, do we continue on with Kirk, or do we go that Penix route, the young unknown prospect? But I don't know.
Yeah, the Vikings are drafting at, I believe, 11.
11 or 12, I think. Is that it?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Of course, some, middling round pick again.
Well, and so it's interesting because, so if anybody is curious, and you might have tuned out by now on the podcast already.
Packers fans only.
Skip ahead. Like we're talking about sports. Go back to Harry Potter and the candles. God darn it. So we will. But, so if anybody is, interested in this kind of thing, quarterback heavy class, but between like the first couple picks and like the 22nd pick, there's not too much value. You have to still hit on guys.
Yep.
The Vikings drafted Justin Jefferson, who's the best wide receiver in the league by a mile. They drafted him, I think, 22nd, 23rd. So you can still miss on guys early in the draft, right? Now, if anybody knows, so back in like the early 2000s, for a long time, it was like the number one pick would just get outrageously more money because there was no cap on like rookie contracts, I believe. And so like you would have teams drafting guys and signing rookies who never played it down in the NFL for like 60 mil out the gate. Mm-hmm. I think Jamarcus Russell is one of the ones that will go on infamy as one of the worst draft selections in history.
The only thing you remember him for is being on his knees.
And like it's just like one of those things where it's like you like the rookie salary cap was drafted into place because of this thing. So now it's no longer as much of a detriment to be drafting number one, but before it was like if you didn't hit on a guy, you were screwed. Mm-hmm. The Vikings have a chance to take a quarterback. There is supposed to be like people have been saying that there could be like as much as 6 quarterbacks, as many as 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, which would be I believe a record. Mm-hmm. There is a podcaster that I follow that, if anybody's interested, they can go listen to. I wouldn't do it right now because you're listening to our podcast, but later on, this guy, Luke Braun, he does a Locked On Vikings podcast. Very in-depth, very smart, very, very cool guy. He's got like a Patreon that has actually like a 7-part documentary series about the history of the Minnesota Vikings. And those are free videos to watch. So plug to him, I guess. I never met the guy in my life, but plug to him. But yeah, he's saying, the Vikings could draft a quarterback, but I think they're looking for a specific person. I think if they bring Kirk back, you probably still draft a quarterback, probably not till like the 3rd round. Maybe you get because if they don't sign Danielle Hunter again, that edge rushing, that defensive line unit is barren, and they need to go draft someone right out the gate. So we'll see what happens.
And it's interesting because like with this sport in particular, football, in this specific position, how much of a larger piece of that pie the quarterback now has become and their role within that. Like it used to be you could just have a great offensive line, a great ground game, a great defense, and then you could, just hammer your way through more physical. And I feel like, the evolution of that sport, we're now seeing athletes who are far more athletic, faster, bigger,
quarterbacks used to
stronger.
suck, bro.
And that
people
too,
would throw like 4 interceptions a game regularly.
Well, and the game has just evolved that much further. Like you look at the schemes and the offensive coordinators, and yes, to a degree, do you get the benefits of rules changing in your favor, like that's a whole other separate conversation. But to be able to, with elite level athletes, go out there, formulate your game plan strategy, see their physical feats, but this one individual controls so much of it in the quarterback. And so that's why coming onto the Kirk Cousins, Caleb Penix conversation, I don't know if there's, in a team sport like that, I feel like that quarterback, the pressure of that role in that position on a team in a franchise, like how you have that on your back, I feel like that's got to be the toughest position in sports. In terms of overall toughest position, because you have the whole franchise riding on you. You're their guy. They know that now because of how the league is divided up. Your knowledge and understanding of the rules and the playbook, and you're at the helm of that offense. Meanwhile, you're sitting down, getting ready under snap. You have 300-plus pound men, warriors with pads and helmets in front of you, and you have to look across the line, and you're doing this hyper analytic, analysis of the defense, their schemes that they're attacking you, and where your offense
is.
If
you're a good quarterback,
if you're a good quarterback, you are. I mean, and you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, because again, this fandom behind your franchise is huge. Like, people live and breathe football, and then you're at that role, at that helm, and then you got to look across, and then you see these defensive linemen and linebackers and safeties that are just the peak athletes, and then you just got to sit there and be like, huh.
I tell you what, you're saying all these things, and everything you're saying is true, but there's not a single quarterback that's probably thinking that when they're getting under center. You know what I mean?
Well, no, because at that point they're so advanced. Like, they've been doing it for so long. Like that, you're obviously not going to make it to that level of playing quarterback for one of only 32 NFL franchises and not be essentially, in comparison to everybody else, elite. Like,
right.
Well,
it's interesting. So I remember this was back in, I had a college class, and it was like motor learning or something like that. And I forget, like, I majored in kinesiology. You guys might be, surprised to know that despite the fact that I talk like this, I have a master's degree. But it's sport management. But I remember one of my classes, it was like, we were talking about, there was a certain study that was shown, and it was a reaction time study. So they were looking at like the reaction times of like elite level athletes versus like the average person, or the maybe like a lower tier athlete. I think maybe like Division III versus like whatever. Yep. And they were saying that the reaction time is very similar, but what is different is that you process information at a much higher rate. So I think they were showing like clips of like a volleyball match to these like elite level players, and they were asking them like what was happening in the clip, and they were showing it for like a split second, but these like elite level players could tell you everything that was happening on the floor based on that, like what was going on, because their information processing was so fast. So it's not that like Kirk Cousins has faster reaction time than the average person, but what you're saying is like when you have elite level athletes that get to like a certain point in the game, they can process XYZ at a much quicker rate, versus you're still looking at like the safety back in like the left hand side, and meanwhile like Kirk's already snapped the ball and a play is going on, and just from looking at like a split second of like where this coverage is going, you know that this defender is either closing in, or this defender is backing off, or like this person's in zone, this person's in man, like, or whatever it is, like know that before anything else happens.
Which is so funny to me, because the way in which that you just described it, and for anybody that isn't as knowledgeable about football, I feel a lot of people might think of football players. Okay, you just got to be big, fast, strong, and you can hit really hard, and congratulations, you can jump and catch a ball, whoop-de-doo, right?
That is mostly their job, but yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But when you look at how much work goes into it outside of things, and like you got to read that playbook, and for anybody that's seen a NFL playbook, I guess I can't even say
I have not.
Yeah, physically in person either. But you watch like an episode of
and they're very surprised, but yeah.
And you're those are thick ass, dense material to be able to try to process and then readily apply in the middle of a game time situation when the clock's running and all those things. It's like these athletes are incredibly smart in being able to, like you said, process in this one specific area, naturally football. But for a lot of us, your career, your hobby, or whatever, it's the same thing. They're just going to a hyper elite level when it comes to that, and it's so impressive to watch. All the way throughout the season. But what was your, as a kid, that first time that you got really drawn into sport? Was like your family all very sporty, I guess you could say? Like,
well, I think I mentioned maybe on the first episode something about like my dad would always talk about being on like the C team for baseball. I was like, Dad, that's not.
aren't A and B before that?
Yeah. How many teams were
I
there?
I'm just
Holy
in preschool
shit.
right now, but
Yeah. Well, so my mom does listen to the podcast, so shout out, Mom. I apologize for all the cursing. She cursed a lot too, though. So she's a big swimmer. I think when she growing up, she was a big, like, she led the biking and stuff like that, triathlon as well. So she was a big, like, she did a couple triathlons, and even in her 50s and 60s, she was still doing them.
Impressive.
Did a lot of races. Very, very like endurance based. I never took to that too much. I know she tried seriously. So okay, fun story. She tried to get me into swimming a lot because she's a big swimmer. Like, she does open water swimming, like in Canada, and she just crushed it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just do whatever the fuck ever. Like, she'll do whatever.
At least it's in Canada, not like the
at least it's
oceans
in Canada.
of South Africa where you got like monsters beneath you. But
she's not.
Either way,
not yet. At least it's the ocean of South Africa. Yeah. So she tried to get me into swimming from a young age, and I did swimming lessons, but then I think what happened was the instructor said that I would need to start wearing like a Speedo for swim. Wait, hold up, but I thought like what he meant was like just the trunks, like just the tighter trunks to like minimize drag, like this all swimmers wear. Like if you watch the Olympics, that's what they wear. But I thought he meant like banana hammock, like really tight, like under like. No leg sleeves, whatever, no shorts. Like, I thought you meant that, and I was like, no, I'm out. I was like 10 or 11. I don't know how old I was. I was like, I'm out. No, I'm not going to wear those.
So funny that you mentioned swimming. Because...
So I stopped swimming lessons. That was the reason why.
So I didn't have that experience until...
Did you really? You didn't have that?
High school. My big sports that I played growing up, football was the biggest one by far. Funnily enough, being from Minnesota, never got into hockey. Was never my thing.
Yeah,
never got into hockey, and I never got into wrestling. I've skated twice in my life.
Oh, shit.
I think it's I've been twice in my life that I've ice skated. But yeah, just wasn't a thing in my family. We were all a big football family, and I shouldn't even say that really because my dad, he was a track athlete. Was his primary thing. He did a little bit of football, but was never a great athlete. Just played high school. My mom was a good high school athlete, had some records in swimming, and I remember always seeing my mom's photo up on my grandma's basement wall, and I was like, holy shit, Mom, like, you were jacked. Like, look at those shoulders.
Still
like,
is. I've seen this woman. And, she's kicked my ass in go-karting before. True fact.
Has.
She has, yeah.
Yeah, true story. We'll say that one for another time. But, yeah, so anyways, I'm go through all elementary school, middle school, and in high school, football again was my main one, and then basketball was my second main sport. And I tore my ACL in football of going into my junior year, and I was like, well, fuck. Junior football's out. That's a bummer. It's gonna be the first year that I was gonna start. Stoked to be for like linebacker. I was amped up, man. And then that was a little bit heartbreaking. I fucking tore it in my second day of practice. Yeah, it was a bummer. So then I knew my basketball season was also going to be out because at that point when I had my ACL, it was a 9-month recovery.
Yeah, if that, man. Yeah, fuck.
And so I knew my basketball was out, and I was like, well, fuck, I don't want to just like not do nothing. And I had a couple friends that were on the swim team, and they were like, well, hey man, would you want to do the swim team for a year?
Swim.
And so the swimming coach, after I kind of blew it off for like a good 2 weeks, and it was just like, well, whatever, dude, I don't really want to fucking swim. Are you kidding me? And finally
water,
lame, no. And then finally the coach came up to me, Pat, like stopped me in the hallway and he's like, hey Kory, I wanted to talk to you quick, and already knew kind of where that was going. Sure. Right? And so he was like, oh, yeah, I would love to get you into the pool, like it's gonna be great for your recovery, like still bending up your legs, and you got some big shoulders, man. Like you'll kill in the butterfly. And I was thinking,
kill in the butterfly.
Yeah, you thinking that Michael Phelps photo where he's out of the water, arms outstretched. It's like, all right, you know what, fuck it. I had a couple friends that were also going to do the swim team that year. I was like, let's do it. And we were going through practices, all that stuff, and swimming in its own right was an incredible sport. Loved it. And I remember when it got to our first swim meet though, and it was the captain's decision that I was not made aware of as to what style of trunk that the team was going to wear, because the captains naturally got to make the decision. and it was between, as you mentioned, more of the jammers, right? So just think of a really tight compression short from your hip all the way down to like the top of your knee.
Which you wear routinely now.
Which you wear, yeah, a lot of the time. Or it was the Speedo.
Yeah.
And naturally, our coaches at the time, they were awesome, picked the Speedo. And then so here's me coming out on my first swim meet of the year, and you got the girls basketball team, the volleyball team, and you got your boys, all your friends and stuff. Everyone's there.
Your boys.
Yep. And fuck. And I remember, like, I'm a football player, and at that time I'm floating around like 195 right now, and I'm pretty cut now. But
yeah.
I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
I know true. I'm pretty cut. And but in high school though, your boy was thick. I was probably weighing in at like 215.
When I met you, you were like 220.
I was a bigger, thicker guy, and it was just hilarious because my parents even showed up, my grandparents showed up. They all knew I was going to be there,
and they didn't know you were going to be.
They wouldn't necessarily know I was going to be rocking no Speedo though, because the moment I walked out that door, oh my gosh, you could just hear the crowd. This big, thick ass high school Kory with what, again, my leg looked like a vase because I was still recovering from a ACL, so my knee was all shriveled up as shit. My quad was gone, and everybody else on the swim team, just these long, lanky, dudes. I'm just sitting there like, coming on out. Oh man, I tell you what though, swimming, it was awesome. I
imagine your dad laughing so hard.
Oh yeah.
I just started laughing.
But that's a cool sport in and of itself, like where you get on those starting blocks, and I don't know if you've ever like swam, but then all of a sudden like the gun goes off, and the moment you hit the water, it just goes.
I volunteered for at the University of Minnesota, the McNamara. No, I forget there's a swimming hall, Naismith maybe. I forget the name. But anyways, they host like these national swim meets, and we had Ryan Lochte.
Oh shit!
Actually swam there one time. Yeah, like national swim meets.
Ryan Lochte, if obviously you don't know, U.S. male Olympian. Yeah. I'm almost also assuming gold medalist. I think multiple.
Should we fact check that?
I know. I want to fact check that. Yeah. I mean, either way, I just know a well-known Olympian,
12-time Olympic medalist.
Okay, I was going to say goals because I know he was right there in the run with Phelps, and that's obviously when Phelps was just fucking taking everything.
Yeah, it looks like you get a bunch of golds.
Okay, I was going to say because he would have been on a relay team. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you got a bunch of golds. We're good.
You're still a monster.
Yeah. So Ryan Lochte swam there.
That's cool.
And at one point, I was when I was in my undergrad for kinesiology, we had the opportunity to do like timing, like volunteer timing for like a swim meet. So it was like a national swim meet that I was timing for. That's intense. It was like I wasn't the official timer, I was like the backup timer. You know what I mean? Like the official timer
felt official as fuck though, didn't you?
The official timer was, has been in this industry for a while. I was like the backup dude just chilling behind with like a stopwatch, like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, we got that. And they also had like timing pads too. So it was like I was the third backup. Like if everything else went down, they would have looked at me, so I didn't have too much pressure. But yeah, no, I mean that's it's really intense, and I think like it's interesting because, I mean, I don't know, swimming is really cool because it is so it's so out of the ordinary for if you're coming from a background that you've never seen a competition, and then all of a sudden you're in a swim meet and it's very like the acoustics are very weird because they're usually in these big kind of like atrium feeling areas. Yes. You've got the water which obviously reflects. Yeah, a lot of echoes. Very warm. Because of the fucking water, like people being naked, pretty much, and it's like I don't know, it's really cool atmosphere, and then you get people kind of close to the finish, like the cheers go up, and people are really stoked, and I think it's fun because you can absolutely scream your ass off as a fan of swimming, but like they don't hear you, but you can just scream because they don't hear you because of the water, unless you do.
So I was just gonna say that was one of the cool moments, is because you're in the water and you go back to that starting line and you jump off and you dive in, depending on what your event is. But, if you dive into the water, and there is that moment where you just don't hear anything. It's just space. But then if you're doing some of those events, like naturally because you have to breathe, and more likely than not, I don't know if this is like perfect swimming technique. I'm sure I'm on some strokes, but like let's say you're doing the freestyle, you have to turn your head to the side. So you have your face in the water, but your ear is going to be out. So you actually do hear the crowd going nuts. But what's kind of crazy is like you're generally not like trying to look at other people in other lanes. So like you just hear the roar of the crowd, and I mean you have in some instances if you're fighting there for the top spot, and obviously if you're in U.S. Olympian unless you were just dominating an event like Katie Ledecky. I think she's another one, and like Michael Phelps. But I mean, you're neck and neck, and you have no idea if you just have a fingernails length lead on somebody that could be like 2 lanes down from you. But you hear that roar of the crowd, and that just gets you fired up when you're in the pool. It is a very unique acoustic experience from a sporting standpoint.
How do you not drown? That's my question.
I almost did. I wouldn't say I almost did, but I mean, it felt like I was. My first meet, I did the butterfly. I took off way too hot. It was a 100-meter, way too hot, and I touched the wall. This is like, I've only been doing the butterfly stroke for like maybe 3 weeks, and it's a weird motion for anybody who hasn't done it. But I remember like looking back, I did my first stroke, and it was just like, trying to get any sort of air in my lungs. I barely made it out the pool. That was another one that my folks were laughing at pretty damn well.
You almost died out there.
Glad you made it. Everybody else was already at the wall. I was the last one flopping around in the water.
I just see your dad saying that so nonchalantly. Like, yeah, you almost kicked the bucket. I was going to dive in there and save him. Your mom stopped me. Like, I don't know. That's probably not what your dad would have said. But.
He would have just been chuckling probably.
Yeah.
Like, or no, he would have like, I mean, at that point, he probably would, trying to get a little video recording of it. Like, going to save this one for later. That's going to be a good home video.
Yeah.
You ever watch those, like an old home video footage?
Oh yeah, like if anybody, the VCRs with like the big camcorders, you almost like hold on your shoulder and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I remember those.
There is something cool about going back and watching some like old footage, like even
do you have VCR anymore?
No, I'm not saying now. Like now, you just look it up on YouTube.
Do you have a VCR?
You get like the Michael Jordan highlights, or way back when. They're pretty cool to look at.
I've got like a DVD of when I went to a baseball camp one time. They had like the small little like DVD things. So I had a DVD of like me just hitting, and that's like the most recent thing I can think of as far as like a home video would be. And like the dude's like analyzing my technique or some shit.
Trying to give you some pointers.
Perfect, naturally, obviously.
Did you ever see the, it was a TED Talk about the evolution of sport?
No.
Did you ever see that?
No.
Fascinating stuff. Like, discussing as to whether or not athletes, as just human beings, if we're evolving and we are truly becoming bigger, stronger, faster, and those are what leading to new records being broken every year, and like we are just becoming a physically superior being.
Have you seen some of these high school kids dunk?
It's nuts.
I can't. It's bullshit.
Oh my god! But is it that, or is there also an added element of the fabric of the swimsuit being more sleek and leaner and lighter? You have better cleats, you have better padding, and you have better equipment. The swimming gutters, like now you can get excess water to flush out. You get better track spikes, and it was interesting to see. And I can't remember the gentleman's name. I wish I could, but a TED Talk, Evolution of Sport. If you type it in, it's super interesting, 15, 20 minutes or something like that. But just comparing those data sets and looking at that, and it was just fascinating stuff to look at.
Well, I know there was a swimsuit ban at one point because of that, where it's like you have less drag in the water, essentially. And so I think you can attribute some records to that. I think it's both. I think
it goes hand in hand.
Like most things in life, it's like there's a variation of both things happening, where it's like, yes, we are getting better nutrition for the most part.
Oh, that's another huge element. Recovery training, yes.
More kids have access to like, and financially is different. I think you have to look at socioeconomic status as well. But I think for the most part, like kids have access to better coaching at a younger age as well.
True.
Or just more opportunities at a younger age, especially for women. Like 50 years ago, I mean, like women didn't have the same opportunities they have now at all, as far as like youth athletes.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Like, and that wasn't that long ago at all.
I mean, you look at I mean, obviously, like it's really easy to point out Caitlin Clark because she's probably the most famous women's basketball player, at least in the collegiate level.
Yes.
Maybe both. But it's like, would she be where she is today if she was born 50 years ago? And I don't think the answer is absolutely not. I don't think, because as women are getting more opportunities now, and they're taken more seriously, which is great. And so it's like you look at the opportunities that people have, as well as the coaching they have, as well as the nutrition they have, and then on top of that, I mean, like things are nicer now because, as I will say, as sports have become more economically like important. Yes. The investment in sport at a younger age has been more so. And so then you do have people that are developing earlier and using better equipment earlier, and then that leads to more of these records being broken and just more like Michael, like LeBron James playing for how many years,
I think,
right?
Yeah.
And like I don't know, I think sometimes athletes fall into cycles of like, is this recovery method you're doing actually fucking do anything? Probably not. But you also have to look at the things that they do that maybe keep them going for longer. I mean, there's a reason that he can play at the most elite level for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, let's take a look. So, Leslie Frazier was a former Vikings head coach, and he was I believe he played secondary for the Chicago Bears in the 80s. And I think I could be remembering this completely wrong, so someone in the Q&A tell me if I'm fucking this up. But he was a defensive back, I believe, and he tore his ACL. And like at the time in the 80s, like the recovery method for ACL is completely different than it is now. True. It's almost archaic.
Yeah, even when I went through my recovery, it was vastly different than like the protocols and things that they use now. I mean, and then you look at another Vikings great like Adrian Peterson when he came out, tore his ACL, and then his recovery time like was way more rapid, and then able to perform at what was used to be almost, if someone had gotten an ACL tear in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, like that was a catastrophic, and to a degree still is, injury that could just derail your entire career. But then all of a sudden AP was like the first one that I remember came off the knee and then had his greatest season ever the very next year.
And it was like 7-8 months. Like it wasn't a long.
No,
like,
it was faster because, like I said, mine was 9-month recovery, and he was back. I want to say, like that 6th, 7th month, and he was up and walking. Where I was like on crutches for the first like 4 weeks, like no load bearing at all. Yeah. And then now I feel like a lot of the process, at least from my understanding of it, is getting you to load bear and those things earlier on. So just like to your point, the advancement within, to a degree, getting bigger, stronger, faster, nutrition being a better role, your access to that sport at a much earlier age, your opportunities, all those things play a big role. But the just sport performance side of things and being able to increase your health and longevity in those given areas as well is huge. Yeah, you never before had a guy playing 15, 17, 18 years, Tom Brady being football, the LeBron James equivalent of that. It's unbelievable to think of what they're still capable of at a still relatively in the human lifespan, like younger years, like when you're getting up into your late 30s, early 40s, and wow, to be able to still perform at that level is incredible.
Right. And then that's not to say that like whatever they're going through doesn't still take its toll on their body. Obviously it does. Oh, God. But you're looking at elevating careers that maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago were 10 years long, now they're 15 years long. And even and I think any athlete would say if they can play just one more year, 2 more years, whatever that is. You know what I mean? I think that's greatly like they would make a lot of sacrifices to make that happen.
And it's funny too, because you also hear within each individual sport, you have some athletes that are going to do everything in their power and spend, spare no expense when it comes to increasing their overall career, and look at things like nutrition and sleep and recovery and every little thing that they can possibly try to control to get their bodies to perform to the degree and to the level that they want them to. And then you also have athletes that are just like, they don't necessarily follow that. Like, I remember like Chad Ochocinco or Chad Johnson. Like it would just be like he was iconic for just like, all right, I'm just gonna go like slam a couple Big Macs and have a couple Coca-Colas or eat the fries or whatever else.
DK
and you're just like,
Metcalf,
and still just freaks. Oh yeah, DK Metcalf. That one came out. Just nothing but fucking candy.
DK Metcalf. I don't want anybody to emulate what he does in terms of what he says.
I hope this was clickbaity because that was unreal.
Yeah, I hope he's fucking lying. He's got to be lying. If you don't know DK Metcalf,
just look him up.
He's a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and he is very famously very jacked. Very jacked.
All caps jacked.
But like he's gone on record of saying like he eats like all these just bags of candy and like whatever else, like, and obviously like we don't vilify any sort of like food. Obviously like candy has its place and things like that too. Like if you're, depending on what your goals are, as long as you're like moderating your intake, you're gonna be fine. You know what I mean? But it's just really odd for a guy who's like also like, you know what I mean? Like it's like he probably has that in addition to other things. But that's just kind of like a funny thing that he would say, and I think a lot of pro athletes have kind of eclectic personalities, right? So they're going to say some interesting shit.
Yes.
Because but like obviously if he burns like 5,000, 6,000 calories a day, I mean, fuck. How much, whatever bags of candy you want, but yeah, he's kind of gone on record about that, and it's kind of been funny to see reactions about that diet with people that look at it.
Yeah, any sort of dietitian or nutritionist is going to look at that and be like, the nutrient density of like the things that you were eating is absolutely horseshit. But like, all right, and then again, you're going to look at the guy and like, hey, if that fits into his lifestyle, and that's what he enjoys, and he's still able to perform at the level he does, who's to say any different?
Yeah. Let's say his maintenance calories are like 6,000. Let's say he's having 4,500 calories of like pure good like whole foods, and then he's having 1,500 calories of candy. It's like,
which, let's be honest,
what are you gonna say to the guy?
Let's be honest, that's also probably the case, right? Like the guy is not like only consuming candy. Don't ever get that the idea. Like, but again, there's probably a little bit of truth to what his statement is. He probably does eat like a shit ton of candy, but he's able to get away with it because, again, he's an elite level.
I think
athlete.
Lamar Odom used to say that too. Yeah. That's a lot of cocaine, but
that too. It's always baffling to me how sometimes we're like, I feel. Take for instance, we had referenced Michael Jordan previously, and for anybody that watched The Last Dance, the documentary about Michael Jordan, his career,
I'm so sorry.
Unbelievable. And I'm actually almost surprised because I feel like for you of all people would be one who would latch on.
I grew up a basketball fan in the 90s. I love the Bulls still. I got like little Bulls hats up there.
But a phenomenal documentary. Anybody who hasn't seen it, even regardless if you are a sports fan or not, it's fascinating. But sometimes I wonder, like, he was arguably the peak pinnacle performance of playing the sport of basketball, and yet you look into some of the lifestyle choices that he had at the time, and again, if you're trying to like optimize your well-being and your performance, you could point to a lot of different areas in his life that you're like, probably not. Like, he was a again, very famous gambler, would love to, stay out late, smoking cigars, would play, 36 different holes of golf before going and playing into like a game 6 of the NBA finals, just burning at both ends. And then you wonder, do you think and there's not an answer to this, it's an impossible question to actually answer, but you wonder what is it, but we'll answer it. But, you wonder what his performance would have been like had he maybe tried to control those factors. Otherwise, that's a completely different athlete, too. So then you're talking like psychology, personality, how you handle those things. But it's, for some athletes, they take every measure and every precaution to try to get their body to run as optimally as it can, focus on things like sleep, recovery, nutrition, hydration, all those different factors to try to perform their best. And then you get other ones that just have a God-given gift and ability, and they can go out there eating nothing but candy, 36 holes of golf the night before, smoking a cigar right before going on into the stadium, and then just wreck you.
Yeah.
And you're just like, damn, that is just unbelievable,
It's like the key. I mean, some people, like what some cars run off of ethanol, I don't know. Like some people are motivated by different things. Like you look at like motivations for humans. Like, you might be motivated by one thing. I might be motivated by something else. And that's like, let's say like that's Michael Jordan's just like, fuck it. That's just, he just like, that make like we've all like Michael Jordan, I think, like was talked about as like this greatest competitor. Like he wouldn't let you win anything. So it's like, maybe that was what kept him sharp, was like doing all that shit because he was like gambling, whatever it is. Like maybe that's what kept him like going. Like maybe if he stops competing in one thing, maybe like that starts to kind of like domino effect, right? I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I never met the guy. Oddly enough, never met Michael Jordan. But maybe it's crazy to think about, and it's especially too because I think athletes take their health more seriously in 2024 than maybe they would have 20 years ago.
Yes.
But it's like, well, but then you're still talking about MJ as being the greatest. So it's like, I mean, how the fuck did that happen?
If you could meet any one athlete,
like current past, or
that's what I was going to say. Okay. Like former, past, present. You get to sit down with them for 1 hour, sipping on some coffee, or go grabbing a brew, whatever you want to do. You get 1 hour. Could be in the gym hooping, throwing a ball, whatever.
Sure.
That's a tough one. So many different routes to go. I just had this conversation with a.
Did you? Yeah. That's
fine. That's why I was on top of
it. Fuck. Okay, you go first.
So I had to go with like my initial gut reaction was Ray Lewis.
Oh, wow.
I've listened to so many different videos on him. Loved watching his highlights as a kid. He grew up. He was one of the greatest linebackers in NFL history. Played for the Baltimore Ravens, the number 52 with the famous iconic defense and Ed Reed. And if you didn't know who Ray Lewis was, he also has a very fascinating upbringing. Came from kind of like a broken home. His mother was abused, and that was like his fuel to try to get out of that situation and to like help his mom. And went to the University of Miami, football, Florida. That was an iconic, one of the greatest college football teams. All about the U. Went there, which was an iconic school in and of its own right, and interesting stories that happened there. He goes on to the Baltimore Ravens, which was a newfound franchise at the time, and leads that team to a Super Bowl victory in 2000. Also at the time, he had just been committed, or not committed, but was accused of like a murder. So just a fascinating...
You know a lot about Ray Lewis.
Yeah, just a fascinating... and then at the same time, just one of the most highly competitive, in-your-face individuals. And I just always had admired his playing style, his mentality. That would definitely be one that I'd want to see and just resonated with just for watching football for so many years growing up.
Sure.
Jordan's up there too, LeBron. So many iconic athletes, but that was the one that I had popped up into my head. And I think I'm also a little biased because obviously football season's going on right now and playoffs about to start. So top of mind.
I don't know, man. So I was listening to I'm just gonna keep shouting out podcasts. So there's a podcast, Six Trophies, with Shea Serrano and Jason Concepcion.
Oh, I recognize that.
And they're both authors, kind of content people that I really like a lot. Mm-hmm. And they had a episode recently on their podcast all about Kevin Garnett.
Oh.
Ooh, and if you grew up in the 90s watching basketball, especially if you're from Minnesota, which of course Kory and I are, you know all about Kevin Garnett. And I think the people that they just talked, the way that people talk about Kevin Garnett is it was just like he was just intense all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was just an intense guy, but like not like a Draymond intense where he's gonna like fucking like punch choke you out. Yeah. But just the the shit talker, the energy, the volume, just like the person that was always like just on.
Operated at a higher level, had a higher 100%. RPM than what you were running at.
And he was so good at it. So I don't know, like I think like
that's
for me, I hesitate because like for me I'm not an athlete anymore per se. I mean like I still compete in some level, but I almost I'd want to talk to someone that maybe was closer to what I do as far as like Olympic weightlifting. Like okay, what is your mentality? How do you train, things like that? But if you're going for kind of like a general conversation with someone that might just be able to offer me like a lot of really interesting life advice and just listen to their stories, it'd probably be KG.
Also a great actor. We came to find out.
I've not seen that.
You haven't seen that one either? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Wow. Uncut Gems.
Despite being at film school for one semester, I was super big into movies for a while, and then I kind of stopped watching them. I just felt like I just had like less time to watch them. But Uncut
big
Gems,
time commitment.
You're saying great movie and KG good actor.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. It was going into it was kind of one of those movies that first bought out. And for anybody that doesn't know, Uncut Gems being a movie with Adam Sandler primary role, and he's a gambling addict and plays that role phenomenally well. Adam Sandler generally be known for all of his comedic roles. Has a couple like Punch Drunk Love I think was another one that it was more of a serious tone, but really kind of popped in this role. This would have been a movie just a couple years back, but yeah, KG plays a role in the film and was surprised to see kind of the acting chops that he had, because there's a bunch of iconic athletes that have gone into movies or tried to do film after their career's done, and
with varying results.
That's a good way to put it. And KG really did well in that movie. I mean, the whole movie as a whole was just like top tier production, but KG's role in it was not only interesting, but again, the way in which he played that role, you really bought into him as that character. You didn't see Kevin Garnett. You saw I think actually at the time, no, funnily enough, he plays himself in the
because
he plays himself in the movie.
Other NBA players too. Right? It has
like
Anthony Edwards, I think, is in that movie, right?
Yeah, he is. Oh yeah, Anthony Edwards is.
Is he a different one? There's a different movie, isn't there? A different NBA movie recently.
Oh my gosh, you're right. So Anthony Edwards is in the other Adam Sandler movie. Adam Sandler did another movie about basketball. I know, dude. Adam Sandler.
He likes basketball though.
He's a
baller. Yeah.
You look at his highlight films. That's a little bit of a stretch. But you see some videos of him playing at the local rec. And there's even NBA players that have also played with Adam and been like, oh yeah, that guy is if he was in, I think Shaq iconically quoted Sandler as being a good
Sure.
hooper. Like, he was at your local Lifetime. Like, that dude's gonna ball. But yeah, it was a different basketball movie. He plays a not an agent, but he works for the team. He's trying to like get that prospect. I guess maybe an agent.
Maybe like a scouter?
Maybe
Like
a scouter. Yeah, a scout. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. And he finds this. That's it. Thank you. He's a scout, and he finds this like European ball player that he wants to bring over. The European ball player's kind of got a little bit of a colored past, and whatever else. But that's the other movie, and Anthony Edwards is in that
Okay,
one,
he's in
which
that
our
one.
T-Wolves right now are looking sharp as well.
Yeah, man. I think they're tied with the Oklahoma City Thunder for the top record in the West.
Alexander's a monster too. Can we just at least have like one Minnesota team? I mean, we had the Lynx that went on their stretch a little bit.
4 titles for the Lynx.
Yeah.
Shout out Lynx. Minnesota Lynx here.
But I mean, other than that, like Minnesota sports teams kind of were in the doldrums a little bit here.
Yeah, and that brings us to maybe the question of the podcast, which we get to 47 minutes in. It's like, I don't know, you and I have been grown up Minnesota sports fans, and it's like, I think there are all sometimes these articles come out, and it's like beleaguered like cities, beleaguered sports cities. We're looking at cities like Cleveland until
Detroit.
LeBron won a title with them. Detroit, a lot of Midwestern cities. Buffalo. They've got like Buffalo's only got a couple teams.
Wow, we are doing it. Yeah, okay. Well, because I go right back Midwest, Cincinnati. I'm thinking of the
Buffalo Sabres and Bills, and yeah. So it's like kind of like these teams, and a lot of it's small market. Like you think about, like there is like kind of like big market bias and a lot of sporting coverage, at least with the LAs and the New Yorks and the Bostons and even Dallas, stuff like that.
Yep. And rightfully so, those teams, those franchises, from a monetary standpoint,
historically been better. Right?
You're going to get
Celtics
you're going to get the free agents. You're going to get those big city sports teams. But
so it's like, so we've been fans of Minnesota, and obviously, so I was born in 91. I think you were a little bit younger than I am. 93. And so when I was born, that was the year the Twins last won the World Series. Since then, we've had the Lynx. The Wild have gone to the playoffs multiple times, but not really capitalized on that.
Vikings had the 98 year. That was the closest that we were, along with the Favre year.
Well, 98 plus
the Wolves didn't really do anything.
2009 and then 2000. So they went to the NFC title game three times. So 98 against the Falcons, which is Gary Anderson missed the kick to send it to in overtime, maybe, or send it to overtime.
Send it to overtime.
And 2000. That was a divisional game with Blair Walsh. 2009, which was the Favre and the Saints and Bounty Gate. Fuck the Saints.
Fuck the Saints.
New Orleans is a city, you've done nothing wrong. New Orleans is a city,
that was some bullshit.
Definitely, shout out to New Orleans. I think, the people of New Orleans have been let down by their government, unfortunately. And the city, but the sports team, fuck you guys.
Yeah, and didn't we get our revenge on Minneapolis Miracle?
Yeah, but
a little bit.
No, I don't believe in revenge because you still didn't get there, and they did end up winning, I believe. Yeah, Drew Brees. That was the year.
That's been about the highlight of Minnesota Vikings football, is at least I believe was the freaking Minneapolis Miracle, and then right after that we just go get absolutely railroaded by Philly.
Yeah, remember when the Vikings scored first, and it was like, oh man, they're gonna do it.
We drove right down the field,
and
we looked good, and then
38 straight points.
Just poured it on.
See, Minnesota fans were very good at disassociating emotionally.
Try to.
Yeah, man.
That's a key word there, though, is try, because I will say every single year I find myself getting, not because I'm a huge football fan, and I love the sport inherently for what it is, but I also, my allegiances run deep with Minnesota.
You want the Vikings to
exactly.
be good.
You want your homegrown team. You want your squad to go, and you put so much emotional investment into that, into that team, into the city, into the players. That you do have a lot of buy-in, and I think that's that group element. Your family, your friends, oftentimes are typically those same allegiances. Otherwise, also some of your best friends are the teams right across the border, like Chicago and Green Bay, and then you have that good little rapport and the shooting the shit with one another and be like, oh, we got you this weekend, ha ha. If you beat Detroit or whatever, and so there's so many just unique aspects of the sport that are that are so fun and so engaging, But Minnesota, it's just every year. It's like you get your hopes up and then they just fucking rip your heart out again. Mm-hmm. But you just keep coming back every year because 1 year, you just hope, fingers, pray day in and night that 1 year we're going to pull it off. And I tell you what, when that day comes, oh my goodness, it's going to be, they're going to give us a national holiday. Well, maybe not national, but they're going to give us a state holiday. Everyone's going to get off.
Whoever's the quarterback of that team is going to get a statue.
God, 100%.
So I think, to bring it back to this podcaster, Luke Braun, who talks about the Vikings, he was saying, like, if you watch sports to watch your team win the championship, you're going to be very disappointed every single year. So we talked about this idea of kind of like, why do we watch sports? Why do we do these things? And I think it's important to look at, we're watching the game, sorry. We're watching,
that was almost
we've got the
punt.
Texans and Browns game on in the other monitor here, so.
Might hear a little shout out or a little excitement here.
Forgive us for
You're going to get some live action commentary.
Isn't it weird how the playoffs can make you want to watch a team like the Cleveland Browns?
These are some of my favorite games of the year, man. I love this. Wild card weekend, then you got the divisional round, teams you never see play, and it is a good time of the year for football.
So anyways, it's important to note, like, okay, what are the reasons why you watch the team? Mm-hmm. Because obviously if you're watching it to win a championship game, you're probably gonna tune out most of the time.
Well, more often than not, you're not gonna be the winner. So you're like vast majority of the time every year going in, unless you go on some magical run, like the Bulls in the 90s where you just like every year Jordan was there, you got 6 straight, or you can have long droughts of just no success. Your franchise is in the doldrums and you're just holding out hope.
So I think it's important to look at kind of like that feeling and kind of like, what do you get out of just those day-to-day activities, and really stop. And I know this is kind of like kind of an analogy for life as well, but it's all about the individual moments, these smaller moments along the way. If you're always looking for that next greatest thing, you're going to be disappointed more often than not. Versus when you're looking at the moments in between those, the smaller moments, just like the day-to-day routine, the weekly routine, I think that can be really engaging, really exciting. The Timberwolves, like you said, I mean, historically, have had a couple runs. Back in 2004, I believe they made to the Western Conference Finals, fighting against the Lakers. Lost to Kobe.
And then we had a couple years there with, oh my gosh, who's the Kyle? Was it Kyle?
Kyle Williams.
No, Love.
Kevin Love.
Kevin Love. Thank you. Kyle. Sorry. Kevin,
yeah,
my bad. They were, but you were respectable at least a little bit. You didn't necessarily think you were an NBA championship team, but at least you were like, hey, we got some pop.
We could make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, traditionally we have not been in football, and we're just going to go here, kind of the 3 major sports, right? Yeah. Football dominates. Basketball is number 2. And then I still think 3rd is Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And then after that,
despite
then it goes to
all of their
baseball. They need to do a lot of shit different.
And I think
college football is about to take them over too.
Well, baseball had
it's too fucking long.
Well, the major leagues, dude. This was actually infuriated me. So I played baseball for a long time. I was going to play collegiately. Decided not to because of various reasons, and also the fact that I was 19 and dumb. But baseball continues to shoot itself in the foot because for a long time they had these really young players coming up from the Spanish-speaking areas, Dominican Republic, Cuba, places like this, right? And I see you're showing me a meme right now. And these players played with a lot of flair, something that a lot of older American white baseball players didn't play with. And you had gatekeeping. So I think my buddy's an Atlanta Braves fan, and I fucking hate the Atlanta Braves. Ooh. For a long time, and they might be better now, the Atlanta Braves had a lot of players on their team that would be they were like gatekeepers. If you showed out too much, if you were too flashy, if you celebrated too hard, they'd try to come at you. They'd throw pitches at you. They'd try to maul you at the plate.
That's shit. A baseball coming at your head like that. Fuck that, dude.
But it's so you had these young players that were incredibly exciting to watch, and so you're players were tuning in, or viewers were tuning in, and then you'd have this older guard of this guy stepped on the mound. I'm gonna get mad at him.
Yeah.
Shut up. And so you might be a baseball purist. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, Croy doesn't understand the rules of baseball." I'm like, you're the problem. Like you are when you're thinking that way, you're saying this is how the game needs to be played. I just don't believe that.
Nope.
And like you have an infusion of talent and also energy into your league, and because they're not playing the game as straight up or like straight edge as you want them to, now all of a sudden like you're trying to dissuade them from playing, and then like your sport is going to suffer because of it. And baseball has suffered for 20 years because of it. And they're just now changing some things to make it a little bit more fan engaging by like limiting what pitch count, or not pitch counts, but like pitch clock.
Pitch clock, yes. That's right.
Things like that too. And so yeah, like collectively, yes, our conscience is becoming much and much like less engaged, and much like our attention span is much shorter. Yeah, whatever.
And you gotta
what of it?
When you gotta up the stakes a little
you gotta
bit, like
change
that's
it up, yeah.
And that's where it's like I feel like as though a franchise and an organization, you gotta stay current. And I feel like that's what the NFL and what the college football systems are doing now a lot better. And the NBA is kind of getting there as well. But like college football for the longest period of time was, people would kind of shit on the playoff format a little bit because it used to be, and now it's changing officially next year, correct?
Yeah.
Where they used to just have a committee. They would choose off of just their own discretion.
The ranking system.
The ranking
system.
Yeah, and all right, we're going to give this team, and then you could have an undefeated team maybe not make the playoffs because then you're looking at like strength of schedule and da. But now they've heard that, they've listened to their viewership, they've listened to the individuals that are tuning in to their games every week, and are finally like, oh, okay, they clearly are pushing us to gear more towards a larger playoff format. Let's make the change, as opposed to where Major League Baseball traditionally has been like, nah, we're just going to keep it same old. Gotta do some sort of change here, because otherwise you guys are going to get left in the dust.
Well, yeah, and I think as far as like college football goes, obviously like they're making changes that not everybody agrees with. There are still problems with the format, but at least they're trying. And also they're so damn popular, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, they can afford to do that.
They can.
Versus like baseball,
But But just mark my words, though, next year they're going to have some of their highest ratings ever. Yeah. In terms of like playoffs, college football is going to just wreck come next year with that different format, and that's something that again leagues need to stay current on, and like go.
And baseball has gotten better too. I also think that the league, like the 100 and however many games baseball is,
160
something.
Again, too fucking many.
Too long.
Yeah.
Because no one pays attention until
because the stakes aren't
late August when you have teams that are actually like, oh my gosh, like we could qualify, like we could make it into the playoffs, but the dedicated baseball fans, I will say, obviously, like you guys watch, like I've been next to people like taking book in the stands, and I'm like, you know what? Props to them. I love it, and I love the game of baseball too. But it's like, I think after I graduated, after I got done, I kind of went in this like big reverse, kind of like falling out of it, and so now I'm a much more casual fan. I couldn't tell you 4 players on the Twins right now.
I can tell you one,
but like it's exciting as ever when it's the fall and like you're watching these teams fight for playoff spots. But like, so yeah, make the season 60 games shorter, make it 100 games.
Yeah, make the playoffs earlier or whatever. You get the NFL and they added one game. Was it this year? Was the first year? Or was it last year?
I think it was last year.
But so 17 game regular season. That means like every game matters. Like you have games that were just wrapping up. We're in the first week of the NFL playoffs, but just this last week there was almost every game that was being played had playoff implications, meaning that the winner or loser of that team affected another team in either the division and the conference, or shook up the standings in some capacity. But that's due to shortened season, 17 games, everything matters, versus these longer season formats, which you can get through notoriously in the NBA. You get up until the All-Star break, and then post All-Star break is like when teams really start dialing it down. Well, everything else was like experimental, so it's like, as the viewer, like, why do I care if the fucking players don't even care? They're taking games off.
Even the NBA. Well, it's actually interesting. I think the who was it that just got fined like $100,000? Maybe the Nets, maybe. So there's a team, the NBA team, that's got fined like $100,000, which for a team probably not that much, because they sat 4 players, and it was very obviously like not because of
you had an injury or you were sick or something. It's like, you guys just don't want to fucking play today. Cool.
And I think they're saying like there's a way to do it that you rest your players, but 4 players at one time is mighty suspicious.
Yeah.
But even the NBA like just implemented the in-season tournament.
That was cool.
And like it was
that
cool.
Was cool.
And like even though like I mean the Lakers won it, no one gives a shit. The Lakers like hung a banner, which is like people kind of had their opinions about that. But ultimately like they're trying to do something, and like it actually was more interesting. You could players seriously.
The players bought in for sure. It was a really cool competitive spark. I think at the right time in the season, and I think as this continues and it continues to evolve, you know, the first initial goings of a project, you're going to maybe hit a little like road bumps. You're going to kind of question, is like, all right, is this the right direction? Is this the right trajectory? You're going to iron things out. You might change it. It might look a little different in a year or two. But I think overall it was a really good implementation of the NBA to have that in-season tournament, and I think this is going to pay dividends here, like in the long run. I think it was a really good call by them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like Major League Baseball wise, you got to make, some changes. College football makes changes. NFL, again, still reigns supreme. It's fascinating to see how dominant the NFL is. And then it's kind of interesting to think about in the greater scheme of things. NFL doesn't mean shit in worldwide. Like when
soccer, baby.
I was just going here. When I was in Colombia, the only time I've ever been out of the country was in Colombia. I was in Bogota, Cartagena, and Jopal. For about 3 months, I was in Colombia, and this was in college. It was part of a program that I was on to getting to teaching. But first time ever being out of the country, and it was right at the time when the World Cup was going on, and Colombia was in the mix and everything. And it was just I remember my buddy Sam Vetch and Joe Miley. Shout out, guys, if you listen. We got there, and we were fortunate enough. The lead guy, Brother Pat, of the program was cool enough, and he was like, oh yeah, you guys want to get some jerseys, the Colombia jersey for the World Cup, and we got those, and it was just a fucking sea of yellow everywhere you looked when it came to game day. Like when Colombia scored and like the TVs were on, people celebrated so hard it felt like the ground shook. It was just unbelievable fandom to see like how big soccer is worldwide, but yet here in the United States, football is top dog by a mile.
Yeah, the only time we watch soccer is like during the World Cup or like national events because like we're just nationalistic and we just want the U.S. to win, which is fair. Which is fair. Well, I think that seems like a good place to end it. With you should try to talk to you about Colombia. She's from Colombia, Tatiana.
Ooh. Yeah.
In her morning class.
It was the first time that I ever finally bought into my love, and now I could say low key obsession of coffee. Was when I was in Colombia, and I got to have
drink your Starbucks.
I have my nitro cold brew right here. Little bit of a little coffee snob. Love my pour overs and stuff in the morning, grounding up some whole beans. But it was in Colombia that my love for it started. So good, from the hills of Colombia, coffee. You can't really beat that.
Go to Colombia.
It's good shit.
Drink coffee.
Good shit. If you don't drink coffee, it's fascinating. I think the shit's like the elixir of life. I've debated on trying to do like a caffeine reset. I don't know if I could do it.
Just like straight one cup of coffee a day, like
no, just like completely and not like long term. Like I want to come back to coffee. I love this stuff, but like I can't remember the last day that I went without having some source of caffeine, be it a coffee or a pre-workout. Because there's days where I haven't had a coffee, but then I'll have my pre-workout that contains upwards of 300 milligrams of caffeine, or you have an energy drink, it's like 200.
Yeah, I think look, if as long as you're below 400, I think you're supposed to like not suffer any adverse side effects.
I talked to a guy the other day, said that he at one point in time was having, from what he says, dude, like 18 plus thousand.
No.
And I'm like,
what? No, 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, 18,000 milligrams.
For people that are listening, that's like basically the equivalent of like 8 to 10 monsters.
No. That's fucking bullshit.
When he said that, I was fucking shook.
8 to 10 monsters. Monsters are like 160, and I know
160,
that.
200, or some of them, or like a C4 has like 200, or rain.
So do you mean 1,800 or 18,000?
Or maybe
because 18,000, I'm pretty sure is dead.
Sorry, maybe that's right. I may have misspoke. Sorry, not 18,000, but yeah, like
1,800 is still wild as fuck.
Yeah, 2,000. Sorry, yeah, clarification there, not 20,000.
So like to put it, because maybe our listeners probably drink Celsius, which is really common. Alani News, which are really common.
Oh, so many energy drinks.
Those are 200 milligrams. So like.
You're having 8 to 10
That's like
of those.
8 of those, yeah.
Yeah, 8 to 10
that sounds
energy drinks a day,
terrible.
which is insane. But like he said, then he went off caffeine, and then
he didn't
for like no kidding, like withdrawal. Well, caffeine withdrawals, you can get like those headaches and shit from what people say. I've never done one, but which is again why I'm thinking about it. But he said that first sip of coffee back, hit them like a train. So it'd be kind of interesting to see like how much has my tolerance like really built up and do like a withdrawal like that for a while.
I try to keep it under 400.
I'm probably a little north, and I'm probably more like
really
6. Because I'll have a coffee, but my pre-workout that I do is
so much.
It's like another 300.
So
maybe like 5. I don't
like
know.
200,
somewhere in there. I don't know. Yeah, caffeine intake.
Anyways,
is what it is.
So Kory, besides caffeine intake, any last words for our community out there listening to us about sports that maybe some people have tuned out by now?
I mean, hey, if you know you're a football fan, you know this is like the best time of the year, getting on into the playoff swing of things. Weather-wise, it's all fascinating. Storylines are great. And I would also say if you're not a football fan, I know a lot of people who maybe just get annoyed or frustrated, like, oh my gosh, how do they just keep talking about football? You know, at that point, kind of understand like where we're also coming from too. Like this is something that find the equivalent that you're passionate about in your life. It could be piano or knitting or whatever else. Like that to this person and to this large populace of people is something that they are extremely passionate about. You know, and this is a really fun time of the year to be in community with one another, to get together for games, you know, go out for a brew or pizza. Like it is so much bigger than the actual sport itself, which is I think something that people sometimes miss. I like getting together not only just to watch the game for what it is and to admire the analytics and the physical feats and performances, but it's also to be in community with one another and appreciate something that we are all passionate about. And I think that's something to also keep in mind as we work through the next several weeks of big football season stuff. Even if you don't like football, I know a lot of people that still love just getting together for the Super Bowl parties and getting together. So it's just a fun time. Just a fun time.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace buffalo chicken dip.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
Wings, go to football party appetizer. I think mine's wings.
I love buffalo chicken dip.
Buffalo chicken dip is fire.
I just love buffalo chicken.
It's really
I love
good.
buffalo.
It's so good.
I should move to Buffalo. All right, friends, that will do it for us today from the Average Bros Gym Podcast. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Average Bros Gym Podcast. Email us your questions and concerns and comments at averagebrosgympodcast@gmail.com.
There it is.
We're on X/Twitter, though we don't really use it that often, on ABG, Average Bros Gym Pod, and then of course on Facebook as well. And then we're Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. So YouTube, some of those episodes might be broken down into 2 parts because for some reason I'm not allowed to post over hour-long episodes. So they'll be broken down into 2 parts, but definitely catch us anywhere you can. Subscribe to YouTube as well. Otherwise, friends, hopefully you have a great rest of it's Saturday today. Have a rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go.
Anybody in Minnesota try to stay warm, baby. It's gonna be a little chilly out there.
Yeah, it's like 5 degrees outside. It's supposed to be 1 below tomorrow, something like that. Is that football.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon. Croy and Kory are out. And we'll let the music play us out as we fade away.